In this one of many crash course videos, we're going to look at how to install Python, how to install Visual Studio Code. We're going to talk about Visual Studio Code extensions and what they are. We're going to look at how to style our Visual Studio Code if you want to change the coloring and whatnot. We're going to talk about terminal commands or command prompt commands or CLI, command line interface commands. We're going to talk about PIP basics and commands. PIP is a package manager for Python. This is how you install different packages such as NumPy or OpenAI or LangChain. We're going to talk about the importance of PyPy, talk about the pip freeze and package versions. We're going to look at Conda. I actually just added, we're also going to talk about installing mini Conda. It's my favorite to manage my virtual environments. Then we're going to talk about Conda commands and virtual environments. You can also create virtual environments with Visual Studio Code. We're going to talk about that as well. If the video is not too long, we're going to get to debugging. If we don't talk about debugging, then we're going to talk about it in the next video. So let's just get into it. Why do we want to learn all these things? Why do we want to use Python? Why do we want to know about virtual environments? Why do we want to know about terminal commands? Well, the entire idea is that so we can build AI-powered apps. In the last 2 weeks, I built 4 AI-powered apps, and I made them all online. One of them is GPT-4 Autocoder and Self-Improver. I'm not going to get into it, but you can write regular Python code here, and then even with mistakes, doesn't matter. And then you can select it however many iteration and click Generate Code after you paste your API key here. And it'll try to improve this code and actually make it better time and time again. Here we go. It's adding to it, try and accept blocks and whatnot. This, you can watch the video to this on my YouTube channel if you like. You can download the code for this from my Patreon. There's also a more advanced version that is available at a higher tier of Patreon supporting. You can also download that as well. You can learn all about it in the video, YouTube video. To install Python, you just have to go to python.org downloads and click this Python latest version. It's okay because we're going to install the latest version globally, but we're mostly going to be using virtual environments with the desired Python version. In any case, you just click that and it downloads, and then just double click on it, whatever, go through the installation. I'm not going to do that because I already have it installed, but it's not going to let me go through it as a fresh install. But the thing to pay attention is actually to, while you're installing, to click this button, add Python 3, whatever version you're installing to your path. Don't forget, that's essential. After you've installed Python, then you're going to go to Visual Studio, which is this thing. You can just do a Google search, code.visualstudio.com, download, and download it and install it regularly as well. Here we go. It'll start installing, and you just install it like a regular app. Once you have installed these, then you can start your Visual Studio Code, and it should detect your Python installation right away without any issues. The way I actually start my Visual Studio Code, I have a particular way of starting Visual Studio Code, but if you just search for it and click it, it'll start. That's fine. Actually, it'll start with the last known file, like your last used file. A better way to open Visual Studio Code, which is the way I use it, is to actually create a folder, like a project folder. For example, we can just create, I already created like this crash course folder, which has some stuff in it, but other than the CSV, I'm just going to delete the main.py file. And then see, just click on the folder, then click on show more options if you're on Windows 11, whatnot. And then click open with Visual Studio Code. So then now you'll open that folder, which is a much better way of dealing with Visual Studio Code because it'll remember your folder. And you can right click here. As you see, the first one is your Explorer where your files are. You can collapse it or have it open, right? You can resize it. The shortcut for that is Control B, close and open. You have a search option and you have the debugger. We're going to talk about it at the end or in another video. In extensions, we're going to talk about that. These are the most useful ones that I use here. feel free to experiment. But we're just going to create a new file right here in the Explorer. Right click. You can create a new file or a new folder. You can also do like other things here, like such as deleting, renaming, copying and pasting, cutting, all that stuff. But we're going to create a new file called main.py real quick. Okay, there we go. Now you have a Python file and you can start using Visual Studio Code. For example, we can say print hello world and then run it. It's telling us that we need to select the Python interpreter. I'm just going to quickly select one of the environments I had created and run it again. We're going to talk about all this, don't worry. And once everything is initiated, as you see, it prints hello world. Let me zoom in. As you see, hello world. So this is essentially the basic way to work with Visual Studio Code. Now, next we're going to talk about the extensions. Next, let's talk about extensions. You just come to this extension panel, click on it, and you can actually see all the installed extensions, and you can search for an extension. The ones you definitely want to install is the Python IntelliSense by Pylance, right here by Microsoft. This is a Python extension for Visual Studio Code, and also the Pylance. Again, I have this. So these two just provide you with Python language support, syntax highlighting, and smart completions for your code and things like that. And I just want to mention another extension that I like a lot. If you have CSV files, here I have a made-up CSV file about fast cars. It's just you can click on it and you can view it in Visual Studio Code, but it's not the most pleasant way of looking at it. For example, another extension is what's called CSV to table, I believe. This one, I have it already installed. For example, I can click on this super fast cars thing, the CSV, and then I can do Control-Shift. Next up is the theming. You can go to File and then Preferences, and just check out all the settings and extensions. You can configure Visual Studio Code exactly to your liking, but we're going to talk about the theme here. Again, you go to File and then Preferences and then Theme, and then you go to Color Theme, and you can actually search from a lot of themes. You can also search online and download. Let's click the Solarized Light. See? You can customize your themes exactly as you like. Let's try another one. Asset Purple. I guess maybe that's what I was using. Maybe not this one, but anyway, you can play around with this. Pick the Winter is Coming light. You can really make it your own. Let's see what else. This is Atom 1 Dark, for example. I like this. Maybe I'll keep this. Atom 1 Dark. This one. There's IU Dark. It's really up to you. I'll just keep this for the duration of the video. Might just keep using this anyway. So these are themes, but pay attention that you also have a bunch of other options you can play around with. And these are how you can style your VS Studio Code to your visual preference. Another AI-powered app I built is a programming tutor for Python, JavaScript, Rust, Go, and HTML, CSS JavaScript. You can watch the video about that on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be looking, or you can download the code again from Patreon. I'll put the links in the description. Next, let's talk about terminal commands, command prompt commands. To start a command prompt in Visual Studio Code, you go to these three dots, or actually if I was zoomed out, it'll be apparent right here. You go to terminal and create a new terminal. Okay. Once the terminal is started, you go to this little arrow button right here. Okay. And now you click on command prompt right there. And it'll start a command prompt and it'll go to your right environment. We're going to talk about virtual environments here in a moment. Don't worry. And when you're in your environment, you can do a bunch of things. Once you're in the terminal, for example, let's create a folder. Let's just say new. The number one command is like cd. You can say cd new and you will actually get into that folder. There is nothing in this folder, but we can create a file. I just right clicked and said new file. Let's say 1.py. Now let's create another one. 2.py. Doesn't matter. we are in the new folder in our terminal, and we can use the dir function, and we can actually list those files in the folder. We can do cd ... to get out of that folder, and we're back to our crash course folder, which is this one right here. You can dir here and see the list of files here, for example. You can delete a file, for example. You can do del, and then you can say s, for example. And as soon as you write a letter, you can click tab, and it'll try to autocomplete. And it did this in this case. We're just going to delete it, and we just have deleted that file. Okay, so these are terminal commands, and there are quite a lot of them. I have outlined a few here. For example, you can do type to display the contents of a file. Del erase, you can rename a file. You can do a task list. Let's try this. Actually, this will display all the tasks that are running. Kind of having your task manager live, and you can see all the tasks. Anyway, so these are terminal commands. The cd dir are one of the most popular. You can do md new _2. It'll create a new folder, md, or mkdir will do the same thing, new _3. Okay. You can also delete folders as well. You'll have to use, I'm not sure, but these are some of the most used. I don't even use most of them, but dir cd are the ones that I use most. So this is essentially how you control your computer from the terminal. I changed my styling again. I think this is so much nicer. Anyway, next let's talk about pip commands. Pip is a package manager for Python. So if you're in your directory, right, and sometimes you'll need to install external packages. For example, you can say pip install OpenAI. This is the command to install OpenAI. I already have it installed, so this says requirement already satisfied. But you can install like pip install pandas to deal with data frames, for example, and it will install it for you. I have it already installed. You can also do like pip list, which will list you all the packages you have installed in your environment. There we go. For example, you can pip uninstall to uninstall something. For example, let's uninstall pandas. Pip uninstall pandas, and it found the version, and it's uninstalling it. As you see, we had pandas version 1.5.3. It's asking us to proceed. We're going to say yes. You can also install pip packages by version numbers. Now this brings me to my next topic. When you're installing pip packages, you really do want to install the right pip package, because pip installations can be dangerous if you accidentally misinstall something. When I'm trying to install something, for example, like LangChain or something, I always do a search and make sure that I'm using the right package to install. And PyPy.org is a great place. I don't usually go to PyPy, but what I do is, let's say if I'm going to install pandas, pip install pandas, just do a quick Google search, and the first result, usually one of the first results, is PyPy. Click on pandas, and this is how you install pandas. You can copy, you can bring it here and click. And we're not going to install it just yet. You can also look at release history, and these are all the different versions of pandas. For example, you can install 1.5.1. This is important because sometimes the programs you're building will require different versions of different packages. To install a different version, you just use the same command, pip install pandas, for example, and then equals 1.5.1, and then click enter, and it will install that version on your system. In this case, in our virtual environment. We're about to talk about the virtual environment, but this is going to install. It's just going to take a moment. In the meantime, like, there are some pip commands, like for example, pip install from requirements, for example. We're going to talk about that here in a second after the pandas is installed. We talked about pip list. What you can do is pip freeze. For example, pip freeze your requirements into a pip freeze all the packages that you have installed into a requirements.txt file. This way, if you're sharing your program with others, they can quickly install the requirements by using pip install -r requirements.txt. So we're going to freeze our pip packages into a requirements.txt file, we use the pip freeze command greater than the name of the file, usually requirements.txt. And when you click enter, requirements.txt file will be created with all the packages that you have installed in your system. So if you want to share it with the world, you can do this. And then if somebody were to wanting to install all these packages, then they can use pip install -r requirements.txt like this. We already have all of it, so it's going to say, I'm not sure why it gave an error, but this should work normally, and so people can install so like this. Another thing is that you don't have to pip freeze. You can actually just list your requirements here. For example, you can say OpenAI LangChain, and you can say pandas equals 1.5.1, and then make sure to save that file, Control S, or file.save. Go to make sure to save it. Another cool terminal tool which I forgot to mention is that all the commands that you've used in your terminal is accessible by the up arrow and the down arrow, so you can go back to your earlier commands, like for example pip list. We can just do that. But let's do this pip install our requirements text again. See, it's trying to install OpenAI LangChain and pandas. All the requirements are already satisfied. There are other pip commands. I'm going to actually share this file with my Patreon supporters. On my Patreon, I have 40 plus files of code for different projects I've been working on. So feel free to support me in my endeavors. Feel free to download the code by becoming a patron. I also just started AI workshops and live QA sessions. You can check those out as well. Next, we're going to talk about installing mini Conda and managing our virtual environments along with Conda commands. You can download the mini Conda from docs.conda from this link, or you can just quickly do a search on install mini Conda, and the first link will just take you there. And there's the Windows installers from my system, and you can download and install mini Conda. After you've installed mini Conda, now you can manage your environment using Conda. This brings us to talk about the Conda commands. Conda create creates an environment. Conda activate activates an environment. Conda deactivate deactivates an environment. Conda envs will list all the environments that are available to you, which you have created. As you can see, I'm already in an environment called FastAPI-video. I can say Conda deactivate, and when I run this, I deactivate this environment and I go to my base environment. I can create a new environment by saying Conda create, and then I have to say -n. It's for giving it a name, and I can just say new. Okay, click, and just have to say yes, and then this environment will be created, and you say Conda activate new, and now you're in your new environment. And this environment will have all separate packages. For example, if you do pip list, you'll see that we no longer have OpenAI because we had installed OpenAI in a different environment. I do have my OpenAI actually installed on my general global environment as well. That's why it shows up. Any package that you've installed in your global, in the base environment, will be available to all the virtual environments. But any package that you install into a new virtual environment, and any virtual environment, will be only available within that environment. Let's deactivate this, Conda deactivate. And now we're back to our base environment. And if you do a pip list, you'll see that OpenAI shows up here as well because it's installed globally. You can remove an environment by saying Conda remove -n new. I'm sorry, actually it is Conda and then the name of your environment, then remove. And you will, actually I made 2 mistakes in a row, but the correct command is Conda remove -n for name. New is the name of your environment, and then --all. And this should remove the environment. And then we can do Conda env list to list the environments, Conda and then env list. And as you see, I have quite a lot of environments, but the new has been removed. So this is how you use Conda. If you, like I said, these are a bunch of different commands that you can use. There's also more. It's best to just do a quick Google search on them. For example, removing Conda environments, and you can find the right command. Creating new environments is important because sometimes the packages will conflict and whatnot. It's almost always a great idea to start a brand new environment when you're starting a new project. I hope this will help you in your future projects. Another app I built is this Listen to PDF document stories. This allows you to upload a PDF document or select from the pre-selected ones. For example, attention is all you need. And it creates audio summarizations of it. This is really fun. You can create it for as many pages as you like.
In this article, the authors introduce a new neural network architecture called the trans.
I'll put the link in the description. Feel free to try it out. You can also create new environments from Visual Studio Code. If you create a requirements.txt file with some packages in it, then Visual Studio Code will ask you to create an environment. You can click that. You can create a env environment, which I don't prefer. I like Conda environments, and click on Conda. Then it will ask you which version of Python you want to use. Let's click 3.10. It'll start creating an environment by creating a Conda folder right here. So this is like a local environment, which is created in this folder right here. And it has created this environment. You can take a look. This is the name of the environment because it's created in a folder. We can say Conda activate and paste this here. And you can activate it because I'm making a mistake. But one way to activate this is actually close your terminal and then start a new terminal. And this new terminal, now you click on command prompt by using this arrow button, and this should start you in that environment. This is the name of the environment right here, which is created right then and there. Now, I don't like this method very much. I almost always use the Conda commands to create my environment. One last thing I want to mention is that let's deactivate this environment. Now we're back to our base environment. You can create Conda create dash n, let's say new, because we had deleted the new environment. You can say Python equals, for example, 3.8. And this way you can actually create a Conda environment with the required Python version. So this is really handy and useful. So when you create a Conda environment, you not only are in this separated environment with different packages, but you can actually select your Python version as well. Just to demonstrate, when I click Control